The woman at that microphone got booed by a whole arena the second she opened her mouth. And the reason comes down to two players. One she stood up for that same day, and one she didn't. The player she protected is the one who put Caitlin Clark on the floor. The one she said nothing for is Clark herself, hurt, out, and watching from home. That woman is Cathy Engelbert. She's been the commissioner of the WNBA since 2019, and on Tuesday night, she was booed at the Commissioner's Cup Final, a trophy that carries her own office's name, the instant she picked up the mic to hand it over. And here's the part that should bother every single Fever fan watching this. Just hours before she got up on that stage, she'd put out a public statement standing behind Alyssa Thomas, the player the league suspended for contact to Clark's throat area. For Clark, who's the one sitting hurt with no timetable to come back? Nothing close to it. So, let's slow this down. Because the commissioner made a choice on Tuesday, out loud, and she made it in front of everybody. Start with the number that put Clark on the sideline in the first place. 6 nights before that trophy ceremony, on a Wednesday in Phoenix, Clark had 19 points and 8 assists in a little over 20 minutes of basketball. She was carving the game up. And then, in the third quarter, she went down after contact to her throat area. No foul called in the moment, no whistle, nothing. She didn't come back. The league looked at it after the fact and handed Alyssa Thomas a flagrant 2, a 1-game suspension, and a fine. So, even the WNBA's own review said, what happened to Clark crossed a line. Now hold those two things next to each other. That's the player Cathy Engelbert chose to publicly defend on Tuesday, and the one she left out is the one who hasn't played since. Here's where it gets uncomfortable for the commissioner. Let's walk through exactly what happened that night, in order, because the timeline is the whole story. It's Tuesday at Barclays Center in Brooklyn, the Commissioner's Cup Final. The New York Liberty beat the Las Vegas Aces 93-85 to become the first 2-time champions of that cup, with $500,000 in prize money on the line. Breanna Stewart takes MVP. Jackie Young pours in a game-high 31 for Las Vegas, but it isn't enough. The Aces were even missing Aja Wilson, who sat out hurt. Liberty led by as many as 17 at one point. It's a big night for the league. A packed building, a real trophy, cameras everywhere. And when Cathy Engelbert walks out to hand that trophy over, the building doesn't cheer. It boos. The moment she reaches the microphone, the boos start. And they don't stop until she's done talking. Her own event, her office's name on the cup, and the crowd turned on her. Think about how unusual that is. This isn't a road crowd booing a rival. This is the Sports Zone showcase night, and the person running the whole league can't get through a trophy presentation without being drowned out by the fans. That doesn't happen because people are in a bad mood. That happens because something specific set them off. Now, crowds don't do that out of nowhere. So the question is, why? What happened earlier that day that put a whole arena in that mood by the time she reached the mic? And that brings us to the statement. Earlier on Tuesday, Alyssa Thomas had spoken up publicly about hate and threats she says she and her teammates have dealt with. I'm going to be careful here, because a lot of what got said around that has never been verified. So I'm not going to treat any of it as proven fact. What I can tell you is what the commissioner did next. About 2 hours after Thomas spoke, Cathy Engelbert, through the league's office, put out a written statement. And I'm going to read it to you word for word because the wording is the point. She wrote, "The WNBA vehemently condemns any and all forms of hate. The safety and well-being of everyone in our community is always the league's top priority. We are aware of Alyssa Thomas's comments, and what she and her teammates have experienced is completely unacceptable and not representative of the WNBA community. The league and our security team have been in contact with the Phoenix Mercury organization and remain committed to protecting all players." Read it again in your head. Committed to protecting all players. That statement went out about Alyssa Thomas, the same player the league had just suspended for the contact that put Caitlin Clark on the floor. The commissioner personally put the weight of her office behind Thomas, in writing. On the same day, the crowd would boo her off her own stage. And here's the thing that doesn't add up. Where's the statement like that for Clark? Because Caitlin Clark isn't some one-off unlucky night. She's been on the wrong end of hard fouls and dangerous contact for the better part of 2 seasons now. A documented pattern, game after game, that reporters have literally built running timelines around because it kept happening. This isn't fans imagining things. It's been written up, cataloged, dated. She is, by a mile, the biggest draw this league has ever had. The reason a lot of these arenas are full in the first place. And through all of it, she has never gotten a public statement of protection from the commissioner that reads anything like the one Thomas just got. Not once. And it's worth being clear about what the real problem is here, because it's easy to point at the wrong thing. The Ringer ran a piece on this just last week, and the headline landed it perfectly. The WNBA's problem isn't Caitlin Clark. It's trust. Trust that the league will look out for its own players the same way, no matter whose name is on the jersey. And this week, that trust took a direct hit. And it came from a statement, from a choice about whose safety was worth saying out loud. That's the choice. Not a slip, not an accident. A commissioner in writing decided which player was worth standing up for out loud. And it was the one who did the hitting, not the one who got hit. Now, I want to be fair about something, because it matters. Clark hasn't been left completely alone in all this. Her own head coach, Stephanie White, has had her back on the record. After the hit, White called it egregious and utterly disrespectful. She used the words cheap shots. So the defense of Clark exists. It just came from her coach. It did not come from the person who runs the entire league. And that's what makes Engelbert's silence land the way it does. Somebody could have spoken up for Clark from the very top of the sport. The one person with the biggest microphone in the room just chose to point it somewhere else. So, where does Clark stand right now as all of this plays out? She's still out. She got hurt in Phoenix, and she sat the very next game. The Fever hosted the Sparks and won it anyway, and won it big, 111-87, with Kelsey Mitchell dropping 26 and Ty Harris adding 16. So, the team can win without her for a night. That's not the point. The point is, the biggest name in the sport is the one on the bench. And by everything her coach has said this week, Clark's expected to miss more time yet. She didn't practice on Tuesday. There's no firm date on the calendar. The one hopeful sign is that she's been getting some individual work in on her own. Her team's next game is this weekend, and the whole Fever world is waiting to see whether she's anywhere close to ready. But nobody's promising anything. And that tells you everything about the priorities at the top. The biggest name in the sport is hurt, out, with no timetable. And the one written statement the commissioner chose to put her name on this week went to the other side of that story. Let me put this in a bigger frame, because we've actually seen a league face this exact question before, and answer it the opposite way. Go back to the late 1980s. Michael Jordan is turning into the biggest star the NBA has ever seen. And the Detroit Pistons decide the way to deal with him is simple. Hit him. Hard, over and over, a whole strategy built around beating him up every time he drove to the basket. There was even a name for it, and the league eventually made a choice. Over time, it changed how the game got called to protect its offensive stars, so that its biggest draw couldn't just be physically pounded off the floor night after night. Nobody's pretending that happened overnight, or with one memo. But the direction was clear. The NBA looked at its franchise player getting battered, and it decided the star was worth protecting. So it moved, slowly, to protect him. Now look at the WNBA. Its biggest draw in history is taking hit after hit. And when the commissioner finally put out a protective statement this week, she put it out for the player who hit her. Same situation. Two leagues, two completely different answers. So here's what I keep coming back to. Cathy Engelbert got booed off her own stage on Tuesday at an event with her office's name on the trophy. And a lot of people watched that and thought the crowd was being rude. I don't think that's what that was. I think a building full of fans understood exactly what she'd done that day, who she'd stood up for and who she'd left out, and they told her about it the only way they could. The commissioner made her choice out loud. Now I want to hear yours. Was that booing about respect? Or was that crowd telling Cathy Engelbert something she already knew? Drop it in the comments, because the one person who should be asking that question clearly isn't.